A retired military corporal says she's lost all faith in the justice system. This after a judge recently stayed the sexual assault charge against her alleged perpetrator. The reason? It took too long for her case to get to trial. Her case was among the first out of dozens of military sexual offenses cases to be transferred to civilian police after a recommendation in 2021 by a retired Supreme Court justice. But now she fears dozens of other victims could face the same fate. Here's the CBC's Ashley Burke.
You're just like, that did not just happen.
Retired Corporal Ariana Nolette can't believe her sexual assault case isn't going to trial.
To see how this case was handled and mishandled, mismanaged, to the point that I didn't even get a day in court, is beyond disappointing.
She reported being sexually assaulted by another military member in 2020. Her case was among the first to be transferred from military to civilian police after a recommendation in 2021 to the government by retired Supreme Court Justice Louise Arbour amid an erosion of trust over the military's handling of these cases. It was welcome news to Nolette at the time.
It was a rejoicing day for a lot of military women. I think it was a sense of relief.
But Nolette said that relief faded after her Crown attorney was replaced twice.
I think the handling from one Crown attorney to another allowed my case to slip through the cracks.
A court transcript last month shows the judge stayed the sexual assault charge. The case could not proceed on the grounds there's been a violation of the accused's right to trial within a reasonable time. The accused had pled not guilty.
I didn't get the justice that I deserve. I think I have completely lost all inherent trust in the judicial system in Canada.
She's now concerned for dozens of victims that their cases transferred to the civilian system could face the same fate.
We got a problem, and it needs to be fixed. It needs to be fixed now.
This military law expert says the government hasn't yet changed the law to take handling sexual offenses completely out of the military's jurisdiction, which he says could speed up getting cases to trial.
Should have been done months ago. And the longer we wait, the longer we are vulnerable in having more incidents of this type.
In a statement, a spokesperson for the defense minister said work is underway on Arbour's recommendation to change the law and move sexual offenses out of the military's jurisdiction. As for Nolette, she wants her day in court. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
Okay, you just heard briefly from our next guest there in Ashley's item, but for more on this, Michel Drapeau is a retired colonel and a lawyer who has represented victims of sexual assault in the military, and he joins me now. Mr. Drapeau, thanks for coming in. You said there this could happen again. How likely, how concerned are you that we could see other cases end up going in the same process?
Very likely, because it's almost an ad hoc system that we have. The civilian courts are having this additional workload. I don't know if they got additional people to deal with it, but it comes from there's overnight, and sometimes it takes a little while before the military police investigate it and before they decide to pass it on to the civilian. So it's a recipe for more delay. It doesn't need to happen too often. I mean, this person, Madame Nolette, has been, in fact, denied justice, and an accused has been able to walk free. We don't want to have a repeat of this, but the likelihood of this happening is very high.
Okay, so you say it's very, very likely. What are the sort of specific changes that are needed to ensure that this doesn't happen?
The simplicity of it will kill you. All he needs to do is to amend Section 70 of the National Defence Act, add one subparagraph that reads sexual assault. That's it. I mean, you take a paragraph on a piece of paper, and that could be done in a first reading by the minister getting up in the House today or tomorrow, the day after, and going through the parliamentary system.
Okay, but for people who haven't read that specific section of the National Defence Act, what are you talking about? Amend the law to ban the military from dealing with sexual offences
Exactly.
and send it there right away?
Which is the way it was in 1998. At the time, the military did not have jurisdiction over sexual assault. That belonged to civilian tribunals. So we could return to what it was in 1998. How do we do this? We make sure that the act is amended. It's going to go through both houses and have a royal assent. It may take 5 or 6 months or a bit more, but eventually it will be clear. The civilian courts, the Superior Court and the provincial courts will understand, and they'd be able perhaps to receive additional manpower in terms of lawyers and even judge and so on to deal with this increase. The increase is not all that large when you compare over 13 jurisdictions across the land.
Right. We have some numbers on this from the Department of National Defense saying they've referred 128 cases since this recommendation to civilian authorities. 87 of them were accepted by civilian authorities, 41 they declined, and there's 124 others, but they may have happened outside of the country, so there's jurisdictional challenges. But why does this then become such a problem when it is transferred? Like, how does this delay happen if it is very clear that they are transferring it to a civilian authority? Why does this?
Somebody dropped the ball in Pembroke. I mean, obviously, they had the dates, they had sufficient time to do it. At 18 months of time charges were laid to bring a trial to completion on it. So something happened in there, and it's up to the presiding judge to find a reason and to comment on it, which I understand he will do so. But these type of errors, and the delays are kind of tight, but they apply to all criminal cases. So it's nothing new in here. Why did it happen in this case? I mean, we don't know. We only know half of the story of what we were able to glean from the decision by the judge.
But broadly, I mean, these tighter timelines on criminal trials, it comes from the Jordan decision.
Right.
This was reinforced by the Cody decision a little while later. So this is several years old. This is something the system has been adjusting to since then. But I remember when this recommendation was made of transferring these cases to the civilian systems, a lot of provinces and groups said it's going to stress an already overstressed system. We need financial help and greater resources from the federal government. Do you buy that argument?
I don't buy it. Madame Arbour did not buy it in December of last year when she was presented with this kind of arguments. I think her comment was, give me a break. I mean, if it's spread across 13 jurisdictions across Canada, the additional workload is a small percentage to it. It may be in one case, in this case it was Pembroke, but if you spread all of these numbers across a 13 jurisdiction, that is not such a high number. And eventually, if it is, then there is a capacity inside each one of these Department of Justice and the like to be able to ask for additional assistance to to respond to a growth in criminal activities.
Is it possible, and not speaking to this specific case, because we need to wait to see what the judge says, as you said, but a case that starts in one jurisdiction but is then transferred to another jurisdiction is a little bit of an orphan in some way, right? Is it an ownership challenge?
Well, this happened. That's why I'm saying it should be clear from the get-go who has jurisdiction on it, not only to prosecute in the court, but who will be investigating it. The civilian police should be investigating it. This is what victims of sexual assault within the military have been asking for, and this is what Justice Fish and Justice Arbour and certainly me and my co-author, Justice Itono, have been saying for quite a number of years now.
We've seen, though, the arguments around issues around bail, for example, about the system being overburdened and how slow it is to get things done. I mean, how do you work around that as a lawyer in the system when you've got this case and all the other, cases moving through? What is a strain and stress?
I don't have that experience as a Crown prosecutor to understand, in fact, the mechanic of it and how you can negotiate. I do additional assistance and so on, but they speak to one another. There's a very large organization, so thus Pembroke, in fact, is able to get assistance from, say, Ottawa, some other places, Toronto. I would expect so, just to make sure that justice be served for the victims and trials take place at the appropriate time.
But here we are in the early days of this transition on how the military and how the courts are going to deal with sexual offense crimes within the Canadian Armed Forces, and we already have reached a staying based on delays, and there are the larger challenges of the culture change that need to happen inside the military. I mean, what does this case say about this broader issue of dealing with sexual harassment in the military?
It's a setback because it's another item again that that allows Canadians to lose confidence and trust into the military justice system. Not only the men and women serving in the military, but the mothers and fathers and teachers. Everybody, in fact, who has an impact upon the choice of a career. And we know that recruiting is a heck of a problem within the military at the moment. So this is one more occasion where those potential recruits will say, not for me, not at this time. And so it has to be changed. It has to be changed quickly and properly. And I think Canada, as a sophisticated G20 or G7 nation, can do that. To look after this kind of workload is not the end of the world. We can do it, and we should do it.
Just as a final point, I mean, do you think this case potentially could just be a one-off, or do you think there's going to be a second, a third, a fourth?
I hope so. I really hope so, that it will be tightened up in every jurisdiction now. Those that have had cases transferred from the military are going to be, they don't want to have their face on your program or someplace else and see what's happening here. So it will serve as a deterrent, certainly, but we'll wait and see. But the risk of this happening again, because of number and because of this share, responsibility, is there.